people and many players are always like, oh, they're gonna abandon it. But I can assure everyone that we have two individual teams working on both games. So there is a dedicated team for Space Engineers 1 as well as dedicated team for Space Engineers 2. Today we were looking more at Space Engineers 2, of course, but for Space Engineers 1 we have a couple things planned ahead of us. In regards to what has been already done and successfully completed, there are many things that I would like to highlight, including 12 years on the market with more than 5 million copies sold across all the three platforms that I already mentioned. Biggest one, Steam, of course, but then we added 4 years ago Xbox and later on PlayStation. And of course Microsoft and Sony saw the success of Space Engineers and they pretty much immediately asked us if we would like to be in their Xbox and PlayStation Plus program, so Xbox Game Pass and PlayStation Plus. Plus, of course, Microsoft also wanted to have the game in Microsoft Store as well. Currently, we are also working on the upcoming updates, so it's not only one, but there are actually plans for the entire year, being 206 and 207. So the team is heavily focusing on many things, from the improvements, playability, UX, UI, and many other things that you can see here. It's like a never-ending evolution, I can say, of the game, where you can see big differences looking at the screenshots and videos back from 2013 when the game was released for the first time, coming to the latest trailers that we just released in November when the last DLC and the free update was released, and it was actually a Contact DLC. There are always suggestions welcomed from our players, and even though we are encouraging everybody to give us feedback, we have so many suggestions from players that it's really impossible to implement everything, because we would need maybe more than 10 times the team that we currently have. And yeah, we are really happy that the game, such as Space Engineers, which is open world sandbox, full of creativity and endless possibilities, inspire people to do many things. And that's what we also see on our forums and feedbacks and support side, where there is always almost never-ending feedback from them and suggestions, as I already mentioned. In case of the last year, there were two big updates, including the free update and the paid DLC, which is always cosmetic, and it's always in our DNA to bring those DLCs as a, let's say, if you want to support us, you can, but there is nothing like pay-to-win aspect implemented in Space Engineers, so all players who are playing simple base game have the same possibilities in terms of the gameplay than players who are playing with all the DLCs, because there is no advantage except of the visuals, of course. That's why we are having these DLCs in place. So two most recent updates were Signal and a Contact DLC. To our big success was the Contact, as I mentioned, because that was the best-selling DLC ever. We introduced it, as I said, in November, and it brought a lot of new game features and improved playability for players, which was more focusing on P versus E versus P, again, encounters in 205, so there is like more things to do in a game, more, I would say, entertainment and more goals, because there are many players who are saying that, okay, this is a game without any goals, without any objectives, but we don't want to put their goals, we don't want to put their maps or boundaries, we want to really keep it open, and we want to really keep it a playground for anyone who wants to play the way they want to play. And speaking about mods and UGC that we also touched a little bit for Space Engineers 2, we are really glad that Space Engineers 1 is always at the top 5 workshops overall on Steam, with over 500,000 workshop items on Steam, and it brings us a lot of also responsibility, because we see that players care and they are sharing their creations with others. And pretty much looking at the servers, we don't see server that there won't be any mods or anything like this implemented or installed on the servers. In terms of analytics, so looking at the data only for 2024, players spent more than 41 million hours playing the game last year, which can be, yeah, it's a huge number. but in reality there are players who have more than 10,000 hours in game. And we are very happy that there are many players who became our employees and contractors working with us and for us. So it's great that they stepped from one side of the barrier to another one, but they're always bringing us great ideas, and especially things that community and player base want from the game and from us as a studio. 34 million of those hours were played on Steam, so it also underlines the fact that Steam is the biggest platform for us, and of course that's also the main reason why we are actually releasing Space Engineers 2 on Steam as at the first place. We had more than 2 million unique active players, and speaking on a, let's say, a daily active users, it's usually the peak during days somewhere around, let's say, 8 to 10,000 people. When there is a new DLC, we see more. Of course, when there is no new content, we see less, but those are ups and downs as in every other game. What's next for Space Engineers 1? The next update is 206, as I've mentioned. That's only, let's say, a number. However, this update will be more looking at the quality of life improvements, various bug fixes, but also we will be introducing new cargo ships that are already looking really good. And yesterday we had a team presentation when some of those were already presented and mentioned, so it really looks nice. 207, which is also planned as an following DLC, will be more focusing on survival. So enhancements of the survival for Space Engineers 1 will be adding more and more options into the game overall, and there will be also these environmental hazards introduced into Space Engineers 1. And for 208, which is then the next DLC update, we will be looking more into the PvP gameplay elements, so there will be more fun playing player against player for Space Engineers 1. And of course, this is not the end. We are planning more updates in the future, so we are not going to stop it there, but development of Space Engineers 1 will also continue, so we're not stopping and abandoning the game, how as many might say, and we'll probably see this next week when we will release Space Engineers 2, so we are waiting for it. So, upcoming 206, a little bit more details, focusing on UI elements, as I mentioned, cargo ships improvements, action slot for UI improvements, and also new prototype blocks, which were actually originally introduced in this contact update that we released in November last year. And of course, quality of life improvements. So those are pretty much what you can understand under this is all the feedback from our players. If we see that something is upvoted on our support side, we really look at it and we try to get it into the game, or at least plan it and think about it, discuss it with the team to make sure that it is planned and it's going to be fixed or addressed at some point. So this would be really in a nutshell, and this would be all for our presentations today. Thank you very much for your time. I hope it was not too boring. Now we have time for questions.